Are you tired of those annoying d4 players? Today, I'll show you how to counter it with the deadly Dutch defense trap, a sneaky opening that flips the tables and catches white completely off guard. Let's dive in and punish d4 with style. The beauty of this system lies in its simplicity and flexibility. We are not relying on specific moves from our opponent. Instead, we are playing a system that can be used against almost anything, always leading to a strong and attacking position. Here, black plays bishop to b4, pinning the knight on c3. In response, white plays queen to c2, supporting the knight so that if black decides to trade, white can recapture with the queen and avoid doubled pawns. Black castles developing safely while white continues with pawn to e3, calmly building their position. Next, black plays pawn to b6, preparing to reposition the bishop. The bishop on c7 will have far more influence along the long diagonal, controlling the center and putting pressure toward the kingside, bishop to e2, where white is expected to castle, and eventually does. This diagonal control will allow black to both contest the center and prepare for a potential attack on the white king. It's also important to note that before white castled, the knight on c3 was pinned to the king on e1. Thus, the bishop on b4 played an essential role in restraining white's knight, preventing it from moving until the king moved to safety by castling. However, once white has castled, the knight on c3 is no longer pinned and becomes free to move. That's usually the perfect moment for black to capture it. Since the pin has been lifted, delaying this exchange could lead to problems later. For instance, if instead of capturing the knight, black tries to continue developing with pawn to d6, aiming to play knight to d7, notice that the bishop on b4 becomes trapped. The pawns block its path, leaving it without an active square. In some cases, white can even play a creative maneuver such as knight to b1, avoiding the exchange, and then follow up with pawn to a 3 and pawn to a 3b4, completely chasing down and potentially capturing the bishop on b4. That's definitely a situation black wants to avoid. So, to summarize, as soon as your opponent castles and the pin is no longer active, you should immediately capture the knight on c3. After white recaptures with the queen, black gains the opportunity to play a key move in the system, knight to e4. This knight is perfectly placed, supported by the pawn and the bishop, while simultaneously attacking the queen and putting significant pressure on white's position. In response, white typically plays queen to d3, moving the queen out of danger. Now rook to f6, a strong rook lift and a classic attacking idea for black in this setup. This move works perfectly with the bishop on b7, the so-called sniper bishop, which keeps steady long-range pressure on the white king. At this point, white often underestimates the danger, but in just a few moves, the position can collapse completely. By lifting the rook to f6, black brings an additional attacking piece into play. This is made possible thanks to the Dutch defense structure, where the pawn on f5 provides enough space for the rook to move laterally across the board. From f6, the rook can swing to g6 to directly target the white king, or to h6 to reinforce the kingside assault. Both ideas are strong, though in most cases, placing the rook on g6 is slightly better. It coordinates perfectly with the bishop on b7, combining pressure along the g-file and the long diagonal. In response, white plays pawn to b3, simply trying to finish development and prepare to activate their bishop. Meanwhile, black continues calmly with pawn to d6, solidifying the center and keeping all attacking options open. I'm not entirely sure why black didn't move the rook immediately. Perhaps they were unsure whether to place it on g6 or h6, and decided to delay that choice. Either way, playing pawn to d6 first is still completely fine and fits naturally into our setup. The main idea behind pawn to d6 is to prepare the development of the knight. We don't want to place the knight on c6, as that would block our own bishop on b7, which plays a crucial attacking role. Instead, we develop the knight to d7, keeping our pieces harmoniously coordinated. After that, white continues with bishop to b2, and black follows with knight to d7. At this point, white makes a very common mistake. Often, players get irritated by the knight sitting aggressively on a 4, deep in their position, controlling key squares. Naturally, they want to trade it off or push it back. That's exactly why white plays knight to e1. Sometimes the same idea is executed with knight to d2, both preparing the move pawn to f3 in order to chase away the knight on a 4. At first glance, this seems perfectly reasonable, so we can't really blame white for playing it. However, the real problem is that by retreating the knight from f3, white has actually removed one of the most important defenders of their king. This creates a serious weakness around the kingside, and black can now begin to exploit it. Now the white king is starting to feel quite exposed, almost lonely, and that gives black a wealth of attacking possibilities. Black continues energetically with rook to h6, taking full advantage of the fact that the pawn on h2 is no longer protected by the knight that once stood on f3. With that defender gone, black now threatens to bring the queen to h4, creating immediate checkmate ideas on h2. Additionally, notice that the knight on f3, which previously guarded key squares near the kingside, is no longer controlling those critical entry points. This means black's queen is now free to advance, whether to g5 or h4, and in either case, it will significantly strengthen the attack. This subtle detail is often missed by players like white here. By moving the knight away from f3, they not only lost a key defender of their king, but also opened up dangerous attacking paths for black's queen and rook. Realizing the threat of queen to h4, followed by queen to h2 checkmate, white tries to defend by playing pawn to g3. But by this point, the attack is already in full swing. To counter the threat, white plays pawn to g3, but now black continues with queen to e8, a move that may seem unusual, yet it's still perfectly fine. The idea is simple. Black wants to reposition the queen to an active square, ideally h4 or g5, to join the attack. If h4 isn't available, then g5 is a natural alternative. While it may not create an immediate threat, it keeps building pressure and brings another piece into the attack. And soon enough, white's position will start to crumble. In many similar positions, black can even play the spectacular queen to h4, completely ignoring the pawn on g3. If white captures the queen, black responds with rook to g6 check, forcing the king to move, and then finishes beautifully with knight to f2 checkmate. This is a double check from both the knight and the bishop on b7, resulting in a brilliant checkmate pattern. However, in this specific position, the combination doesn't quite work because white can still defend by blocking with the knight from e1. That's why in this specific position, the queen to h4 idea wasn't possible, but in many similar setups, it works perfectly. For instance, if white had moved the knight to d2 instead of e1, the combination would have succeeded and likely resulted in a quick victory for black. Returning to the actual game, black played queen to e8, possibly to prepare queen to g6 or to support a future pawn to e5 push. White, realizing the growing danger, tried to bring another defender into play with bishop to f3. Black then responded with knight to f6, an excellent and common maneuver. From here, the knight supports the knight on e4 and is ready to jump to g4, adding even more attacking force against the white king. In desperation, white played bishop to g2, trying to reinforce the defense. But it was already too late. Black unleashed the stunning rook takes h2 sacrifice. This wasn't a random gamble. With so many black pieces aimed at the kingside, it was only natural to open the position and finish the game with a decisive checkmate attack. And that's exactly what happens next. After king takes h2, black sacrifices the rook, but in return, the white king is now completely exposed. Black immediately follows up with knight to g4 check. After the king moves, black continues with queen to h5, threatening a devastating queen to h2 checkmate. The only defense white has is knight to f3, blocking the attack. But black isn't done yet. To eliminate this last defender, black plays the powerful knight to c5, attacking the queen but more importantly opening the diagonal for the bishop on b7 to join the attack. The plan is simple. Remove the knight on f3, then deliver queen to h2 checkmate. In the game, white didn't capture the knight, but even if they had, the result would have been the same. Bishop takes f3 would follow, threatening immediate mate. White tries to create some escape squares for the king, but it's already too late. Black continues with queen to h2, then queen takes g2, winning more material while keeping the king under heavy fire. The king attempts to flee, but after knight to e4, queen to g1 becomes completely unstoppable. The white king is trapped in a cage, and black wins decisively.